Well, executives must ensure that gender considerations are part of the decision-making process where identified equality gaps are being addressed. These integrate gender equality with three key instruments. Our gender equality policy, which was established in 1999, it was evaluated by 4 years ago, and evaluation findings are still very valid and a good policy. Then this gender-based analysis requirement that is government-wide, it requires gender analysis and that you identify gender inequality in all policies, programs, and projects. And then we have a rigorous due diligence process. The due diligence being the investigation of a business or institution prior to signing, signing a contract. So why is gender equality important in development? Because that's the business of our department in government. We view it as a prerequisite for long-term sustainable economic growth, for social progress, and sustainable development. And also, the evidence and research has shown that more equal societies have better economic and health indicators and experience less violence, domestic, communal, and intra-state. And when working on gender equality in conflict-affected states, this whole area of research is important and informs our programming approaches. More equal societies experience less violence, as I said on the previous page. And research, and this is case studies and cross-national statistical analyses, has demonstrated correlations between the levels of inequality and propensity, conflict, or violence. So, levels of inequality and propensity to conflict or violence. Now, this doesn't prove that there is causality, but it has implications for intervening in conflict and peace processes. Now, does gender equality fuel violence, or is gender inequality fuel violence, or is gender inequality a proxy, or like an indicator of other causes of conflict? Some analyses suggest that gender inequality is an indicator of broad structural inequalities and norms of discrimination and violence. Some of these studies provide evidence of the following. Increases in gender disparity and deterioration in the physical security of women are among the earliest signs of crisis and violence. Crisis, like state crisis and state violence. Comparing data on micro-level gender violence and macro-level state peacefulness indicates a correlation between higher levels of domestic violence and a greater chance of violent conflict. And higher levels of gender inequality, in a country correlate with increased likelihood of intra and interstate conflict, and conversely, higher levels of gender equality are associated with lower risks of intrastate conflict and concept. This comes from a study done in 2006 by Eric Melander, and it was based on a large data set from Ottawa University of conflict. They've been maintaining this database for 40 years of conflict, and we used a set of indicators for gender equality indicators for countries, and found not only the 2 points that are in this bullet point, but also that states that have higher levels of gender equality are not only are least likely to fall into conflict, are less likely. Their conflicts are likely to be less protracted, so they rise out of conflict or recover from conflict sooner, and they're less likely to revert to conflict. So, and then the following point, gender identity, ideal characteristics of men and women can contribute to motivations which lead to war and perpetuate violence once started. So in sum, these studies suggest that improvements in gender equality and women's security contribute to stability. So Canadian foreign policy directions include elimination. We have these are our foreign policy priorities. include elimination of violence against women and preventing sexual and gender-based violence in conflict context. This was reasserted as a priority in October 2014 when our Minister of Foreign Affairs announced that Canada would support the work of international and local organizations working with victims of sexual and gender-based violence. Well, this is consistent also with our commitments to the UN Security Resolution 1325 and the other Women, Peace and Security security resolutions, as well as supporting women's equal human rights, which is one of our 3 gender equality policy objectives. And entry points for working on this issue also include, working in the justice and sector, which many of you are working on, and in the area of humanitarian assistance. Okay, another priority is foreign policy priority is ending child early and forced marriage, full and equal participation of women in decision making, and the mainstreaming of a gender perspective in all of our work. So now we have a video, and this video is an exercise in